Hello and welcome to the webinar. Today we will be discussing how you can mitigate gaps and risk in your SAP testing. Before we start, please ensure your microphones are on mute. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please send them via the question functionality on the GoToWebinar menu bar. Questions will be answered at the end, time permitting. Any other questions we do not get to will be answered directly via email. Following the webinar, we will be providing a survey. Your feedback and ideas are important to us. Please take the time to respond. The survey takes approximately 3 minutes to complete. Today's presenters include Principal Consultant Brendan Lester from TTC New Zealand, Senior Product Specialist Richard Hurst from Tricentis in Europe, and I am your moderator, Carla Hartman, Director of Marketing and Sales Support for TTC in the Americas. If you are not familiar with TTC and Tricentis, we would like to offer a brief introduction before diving into the feature presentation and demo. TTC is a global software assurance provider that has the capability and expertise across a wide variety of delivery areas that enable our clients to increase the speed and quality of technology development while reducing risk and costs. TTC has been around for over 15 years and has offices dotted around the globe. While our team consists of some of the world's leading testing experts, TTC shares our knowledge and learnings so that they can be applied to our clients' environments in a locally appropriate way. The main focus of TTC is helping organizations go through digital transformation, realigning internal teams, identifying the right tool sets, developing test strategies, and implementing the right culture change to achieve this. Some of our key services include testing fundamentals, technology solutions, and digital enablement. Tricentis is the industry's #1 continuous testing platform. Tricentis is recognized for reinventing the software testing space in DevOps. Through agile test management and advanced test automation optimized to support over 150 technologies, Tricentis provides automated insight into the business risks of your software releases, transforming testing from a roadblock to a catalyst for information. Over the years, TTC and Tricentis have worked closely together to bring better tools and processes to quality assurance around the world. TTC is a premier services partner of Tricentis and has received several accolades such as Best Services Partner in both the Americas and Asia Pacific regions. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, it is time for what you really came for: learning how to mitigate the gaps and risks in your SAP testing. I will now pass the presentation over to Brendan.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you guys for either tuning in today or watching a replay. As mentioned, we're going to look at LiveCompare, which is part of the Tricentis continuous testing platform for SAP applications. Firstly, there's a common set of challenges and concerns in any company, and particularly those undergoing a digital transformation in order to increase product, increase customers, increase revenue, or otherwise provide better service and outcomes to their clients. For a business to remain successful and competitive today, their change needs to occur faster and more often. It's no longer acceptable to be shipping software and business tools annually or quarterly. Demand and the need for change is now required in weeks, days, or even less. However, at the same time as increasing our velocity, we can't be increasing the cost to be put onto the business. Generally, the opposite is required, and these days we're expected to deliver more with less. Unfortunately, under these conditions, it is often the quality of the delivery that suffers and risk is introduced to the business. This is also completely unacceptable, but is unfortunately a common theme across technology and products. So how do we increase our velocity and reduce our costs while at the same time increasing our quality and reducing our risk? And with SAP, how do we do this for business as usual, as well as perhaps custom activity, the application of service packs, the application of enhancement packs, and activities relating to the next generation platform, S4HANA. And of course, with S4HANA, it's not just a migration activity, it's ensuring we continue to increase velocity and quality while reducing that cost and risk once we're on this platform. In other words, a migration to S4HANA is just the start of the next journey. Traditionally, one of the biggest impediments for delivering is testing. Certainly, while testing's primary purpose is to increase the quality and reduce the risk, it does this traditionally by increasing the cost and significantly decreasing the velocity along the way. As seen here, the impact of testing is generally close to half of our delivery effort. There are a number of formal global reviews and reports that all present similar findings. When we look at a typical system, we have pockets of change with neighbouring areas of impact that spread throughout the system. While we can track these to some extent with human knowledge, IP, and some dependency analysis tools, after a while we start to either lose sight of this or we reach the point where full regression becomes the default. Both outcomes increase risk, increase cost, decrease quality, and decrease velocity. You of course get the idea. While we could improve other areas of delivery such as development and deployment, we can now see that by addressing the typical approach to testing, we will have the biggest return. To be able to do this and increase our velocity, we need to work smarter and adopt modern technology to help us. This is where the Tricentis products come in. In addition to leading technologies in the test management, test automation, load testing, and analytical space, Tricentis now has LiveCompare for SAP. Let's talk about this, and I'll show you how LiveCompare will reduce your SAP testing efforts by 85%, increase your delivery speed, and aim for defect-free releases based on fact-based testing coverage. When it comes to a typical LiveCompare release process, we generally promote a bunch of changes through a test environment and then begin some testing. While coverage might have a degree of direction provided to us by development, it's often circumstantial and not done with any fact-based precision. We might even take a bunch of business people away from their day jobs and ask them to look around in a test system. Unfairly, we may even then ask them to sign off on acceptance, even though their activities may have been limited to only what they do normally. And of course, they've lost their normal day jobs productivity throughout this secondment period too. And when all else is doubted or unknown, we'll probably attempt to run what we'd like to call a full regression suite across the system. Unfortunately though, even this won't take into account the real-world use of the system from an operational point of view. In other words, we end up with a blind leap of faith across the chasm on the way into production. So how does LiveCompare help us? LiveCompare takes the information from both the change transports being promoted and the operational use of the system from production. It consumes all of this detail and performs deep dive analysis across it. It doesn't matter if you're using FI, CO, IM, MM, PM, etc. LiveCompare does the same for all. LiveCompare produces a report detailing exactly the areas of functionality that must be tested in order to ensure a high quality delivery into production. These specifically identified functional areas are known as the most at risk. In other words, of all of the areas of the system, these are the ones that must be tested. LiveCompare does this automatically once we have connected it to our development and operational systems. But does having this fantastic capability really help us reduce our testing efforts by 85%? Yes. Looking first at the left-hand side, it shows an exercise where Tricentis has gathered real-world metrics from a number of client SAP systems and calculated an average figure of around 3,000 used objects. That is, a typical SAP site will use around 3,000 functional areas to support their daily operations. Of this, generally around 2/3 will be standard, out-of-the-box, core SAP functionality, while a third will be custom, bespoke work. This could either be developed in-house, contracted out to a third party, perhaps even add-ins sourced from other suppliers. Now it is clear to see that it is impractical to test everything. True full regression is significant, and even if possible, our velocity would be extremely low, perhaps just one release per year at best. So how do we reduce this? How do we test less? How do we deliver more? The first step is to identify what are the actual impacted objects from our change. This is the middle column. Several analytical tools can do this, as it's a reasonably trivial exercise of code impact and dependency analysis. Basically, I change this, what else does it touch under the hood? Again, it's a good start, but as dependencies can be significant in systems, that's an approach that's only going to bring us our impacted areas down by around 25%. That's hardly going to increase our velocity to what the business needs. Looking at the last column, LiveCompare is unique with what it does and can decrease this figure by an average of 85% based on benchmark studies. The remaining 15% functional areas and test cases are the most at risk that I talked about earlier. These are the ones that must be tested in order to ensure a high quality delivery. The difference now between impacted, the middle column, and most at risk, the one on the right, is around 1,800 test cases when looking at this typical system. That's an extreme amount of unnecessary effort, lost time, and wasted money being represented in that gap there. By using LiveCompare to focus our testing effort, we can significantly reduce our activity, reduce our speed, and inversely deliver faster and more often. And knowing we have targeted our testing activity, what we deliver now is of a much higher standard. But wait, there's more. LiveCompare can produce with this outcome extremely quickly. Whereas other products can require up to 9 months worth of setup and data learning to provide just that middle column, just that impacted level of information, LiveCompare's immediate consumption and analysis approach can produce these superior results in just 1 day. To summarize, LiveCompare will allow us to test 100% of the impacted change with just 15% of the effort. And we can start doing this in as little as 1 day after installation. So how does LiveCompare fit into our delivery channel? We start with the changes being made, and as mentioned earlier, we consume these into LiveCompare. The analysis is performed, and we receive our 15% list of what to test. Testing is then carried out, and we specifically target these identified areas. Let's be clear about this. Here we have been given a no argument, true coverage list, and we must follow this. What happens if we don't? Well, we can be told before we go any further. LiveCompare can consume the transactional information carried out in our test systems and provide an audit report of our activities. There's no shortcuts and there's no hiding. And yes, we've certainly seen the situation. Once testing coverage matches the identified coverage, what we've been told to do is what we've done, then we're ready to deploy. I have 0 defects at the end there, and while I must stress this is an aim, it is certainly achievable. Tricentis has success stories where one customer that was several years behind on product upgrades and around 1 million changes, they went live using LiveCompare, and by testing exactly what they were told to, they went live with 0 defects. I'll talk briefly to this slide as well. LiveCompare has some fantastic integrations with certain test case management systems. This isn't the focus for today. However, there are 2 significant things I do want to cover here. Firstly, LiveCompare can take our identified list of the 15% most at-risk items and let us know which ones we already have tests for and which ones we don't. That's great, but the cool thing is for those gaps, LiveCompare will provide starter information on how to get to the functional area that needs testing. That gives us a really good start on establishing a quality suite of regression information. Secondly, and even better, if we needed to know more about a certain functional area, LiveCompare will provide us with the details of the business user that uses that particular function the most. I mentioned earlier that some projects will bring in business users for a testing duration, resulting in downtime for their normal activity and not necessarily getting the returns from a testing perspective. Now we can see that by reaching out to the most expert person in this business area for their thoughts, and only when required, they don't need a test, but they can tell us with a high degree of certainty exactly what we should be capturing in our regression suites. That's awesome. Even without the test management integrations, LiveCompare will still produce similar reports. Let's run through some real-world scenarios that really could equally apply to you. I even consider some of these outcomes as significant side benefits. I've talked about the 85% reduction throughout. For some clients, that has resulted in a 300% increase in the number of deliveries throughout the year. In other words, a 6-fold increase, or from 1 release per year to 6, or from 10 to 60, potentially less than monthly to more than weekly releases. 0 N+1 landscapes is an interesting one. What this means is instead of having to put my custom system alongside an out-of-the-box SAP product system in order to conduct screen-by-screen analysis, I can get LiveCompare to tell me exactly where all the impacted areas of change are. Simple. I don't need to fund and support the additional environments, let alone the time required to carry out such hit and miss analysis. In addition to getting product upgrades back on track, backlogs can reduce and as confidence increases, releases become easier and more opportunity windows are opened. We also had an interesting moment recently with a client where LiveCompare identified change transports that had only ever made it into test in quite some time prior to. They'd never proceeded in production, and they'd never seen this. Without LiveCompare, they would never have noticed and hence deployed them. LiveCompare provides a good number of transparency opportunities into your SAP systems, and additional workflows can be wrapped around these to truly maximize these benefits. Thanks for listening, guys. As Carla mentioned, please send any questions through the webinar screen and we'll try and cover these at the end. And we'll certainly follow up with any that we can today. Now I'd like to pass you over to Richard for a demo of LiveCompare.
Thanks, Brendan. I just need to take the token, I think. So I can share my screen.
Cool.
There we go.
Continue.
Thank you. Okay, good. Can you see my screen, Brendan, just before I start?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. As Brendan has gone through, he's talked about LiveCompare, and right now I want to show you exactly how it works and the type of results you can get from it, and really how it can benefit your whole test process from your development right through to your implementation of your releases. So you'll see on the screen here, this is LiveCompare, and on LiveCompare, or when you first log into LiveCompare, you're presented with a screen. There's a few apps here, and depending on the type of role that you've got, you will have access to certain apps. So if you're a developer, you might be doing some code reviews. If you're a basis person, you might be looking at release assurance. But as we're talking about testing today, I really want to focus on this app, which is called Impact with Tosca Integration. So this is basically the app that looks at the changes that are coming in. As Brendan mentioned on his slides, it's going to take all the changes, marry them up with the things that are happening in production, and come out with this most at risk profile. And those are the things, as Brendan said, that you must absolutely test. All the apps actually in LiveCompare have a similar experience for the user. On the left, we have the setup, and on the right, we have the results. Now, if I dive down and I look into the app actually needs some parameters for it to work, and you can see them listed here. So the first thing I need to give LiveCompare are some transports, or a set of transports. These can be your own transports. They can be, transports that have got custom things in there, or they may be SAP support packs or SAP enhancement packs or OS notes. It doesn't really matter to LiveCompare what type of transport it is, as long as it's a transport. I've got one example here, but it could be you've got a whole list of them and you can upload them from Excel if you want to, or you can even have these apps run in the background at particular times during the week, or when things get released out of your development system into your QA system. So key bit of information there is the transports. Then we have some connections to our SAP systems here. The first one would be a connection to our development system. This is where the change has been made. This is where the transport is and where we need to go to pick up all that information. The next one is our comparison system. This is normally QA, and this allows us to do a comparison of the new stuff with the old stuff. That might be code changes, it might be configuration changes, which you'll see as I go through the demo in a second. And the last one is our connection to our production systems. That's because we want to grab all that usage data from production so we can really focus on the things that are most at risk and the things that are being used day to day in your SAP production system. If you're using Tosca, then this is where we have our integration with the test automation tool, and you can integrate LiveCompare with this testing tool. And what that does is it takes the most at risk things that we recommended to test and looks for test cases in there that are that can cover those particular tests. On the flip side of that, we also get the gaps. So anything that we've got that's most at risk that doesn't have a test case, that will come out as a gap. So once you've set the app up, you can hit the run button and it will go away and it will do its stuff. So it will go and, you know, as Brendan said, very quickly work out all the relationships between those objects and then come up with the most at risk things to test. I already have the dashboard open here just to save a bit of time, but this is our tree map or heat map, as some people call it. It's basically showing you out of all the things that we're using SAP, which are the things that we should focus on. And hopefully your eyes are drawn to the blue colored shapes on this diagram, on this dashboard. That's really where we want to focus our testing. As we drill down into the next level, we get a little bit more detail about exactly what we need to test. So here is the first graph. I think Brendan had a picture of this in his slides, but basically it's showing you what's being used in the production system, what's impacted based on the changes that were coming in that transport or that support pack that we're analyzing, and really what's most at risk. So here we've got a nice big saving because we're just saying to test 100% of those changes, we just need to test 76 different things in our SAP system. So a huge benefit and a huge reduction in the time it takes to test. And things like this can really help then increase your cadence and release schedules to get all those great ideas that your business is coming up with into your production systems. Those 76 things that are most at risk have then been passed into the testing tool to show where the hits are. And in this case, we've got 34 hits, things we can go and test right away. And we've got 42 gaps. All right, so these are things that we can't test or we don't have test cases for. And again, this is a really good thing for using LiveCompare. If you're looking at doing test automation, when you start doing this type of analysis, this really will help you to build the right tests and not build things that you think might be impacted by changes. Let's focus on the things that are truly most at risk and the things that we need to keep testing every time we do a release. And there's good evidence of customers being able to do that by building up the results that they get from their weekly impact analysis to look at, you know, how often is a particular transaction showing up as most at risk. If it's showing up for a number of weeks, then we should automate it. For the more technical people on the call, you can see there are a list of all the objects that we picked up in the transport, or LiveCompare picked up in the transport. So you can see there's some functions and includes here. These are the low-level objects in SAP. And at the bottom here, you can see across the board where those most at risk transactions and things that we need to test sit in terms of the business process or the application area. All right, so this is a good view of giving you an idea of where you need to focus your testing and how much testing you need to do. There is an Excel spreadsheet that comes off the back of this analysis, and this has everything in here. It's nicely self-contained with all the information you need. So if you've got a testing team, they can just access this Excel. They don't actually have to go into LiveCompare to get this detail. It can all be emailed out to them automatically, so they've got all this information. The dashboard, sorry, the first worksheet here is the dashboard that you've just seen with the hits and the gaps and the most at risk. And then as I click through the worksheets, we get into more and more detail about what LiveCompare has found. On this spreadsheet, this is basically showing you everything that's been used in production. So you can see there's some programs here and also T codes. Web applications are also supported. So if you're using Fiori apps, the web application or the wiper object is the back end of the Fiori apps. You can see how many times they've been used. You can see how many users have used those transactions in the production system and who the top user is. The idea here is if you are building automation, you know, the best person to go and talk to about how this transaction works in the real world, in production, these are the people you need to go and talk to. Because these, you know, I'd say these are the experts in the business that are using these things day in and day out as part of their jobs. Again, we don't, you know, there's nothing hidden here. So if you want to look at the things that are just impacted and not most at risk, you can do that by changing the status column. If I just focus on the most at risk again for a second, you'll also see that all the custom programs that are most at risk are flagged here as well. And I know that's important because, you know, most people or most SAP implementations that I've certainly been involved with always have custom code, and you know, they need to be tested and looked at as you do these changes. Whether it's a change, an SAP change, it's important that you know where the impacts are. If I go to the next spreadsheet, we get into a little more detail here because this is showing me why I should test these particular things or why these are most at risk. And as an example here, you can see that this particular program is shown 4 times on my report here. And that's because it's linked to 4 objects that were changed in this transport. All right, so I can see LiveCompare, you know, by its smart learning has worked out that these functions are linked to this particular program, and that's why you should be testing it because it has the relationship between them. You'll notice all these are hyperlinked, and if I click down on here, I then get to another report which actually shows me, for anyone who's interested in ABAP code, you can drill down and start to see where the code has changed between the new stuff on the left and the old stuff on the right. So the side-by-side comparison, particularly important if you're doing a support pack and you're a developer and you want to know, you know, are there any new attributes that are coming in this function that my custom code is using? If there is, then, you know, maybe I need to change my custom code, my custom program to make it work with these new attributes. So that's the drill down. Let me go back to the spreadsheet, sorry. And then the other thing here, you'll notice that, you know, we've got technical objects here, but we've also got a table. And that's because there has been a piece of configuration changed in this particular transport. And I can drill down and start to see where that config is, in this case, new. So there's a new order type that's being created as part of this release. So if I'm testing my sales transaction or billing transaction, I think it was, this is the data I should use. You know, this is the thing that's new in the system. So it's really focusing the tester on the right configuration to use, as well as part of this release. You can also see the IMG hierarchy here. If you're doing configuration in SAP, you can see where that particular table sits. Okay, as I go through the spreadsheet, just to kind of finish off here, we have the test hits and gaps. Just to remind you there, this is most at risk things that we've flagged up that don't have that if they're a hit, they have a test case, which is great because now I can go and test those, and actually those get created as test executions in Tosca. If it's a gap, which I can just flick on here, these actually don't have any test cases in Tosca in this case. So I need to think about how I'm going to test those. And if I go into the test it details, it shows me those most at risk things and where they sit in the particular hierarchy that I have set up in Tosca. So this is my business process hierarchy, if you like, that sets out how I'm going to test my SAP processes. Then you can see where we've got the hits. Okay. And let me just actually start Tosca while I'm here. And then you can see the last piece of the integration where we've actually created the requirements based on the gaps that LiveCompare has found. So just opening this up, this is taking me into the project in Tosca. All right, and here you go. You can see the, as I've been talking, doing the demonstration, you can see the app has run, and you can see that all the gaps that I had in my most at risk have been created in Tosca here. The execution list has also been created here. So these are all the hits that we've got, and they are ready to run now in my Tosca environment or in my Tosca project. Okay. And yeah, just to recap, just to finish off, again, you know, what we're seeing here is the reduction in the from the impacted and the most at risk, and that's done by LiveCompare automatically based on this relationship that it works out. So how LiveCompare does that, it basically learns your SAP system. It knows the depth, so how far away this particular object is from the transactional program that uses it, and it uses that information to generate the most at risk profiles that you're seeing here today. That's the end of my piece. I think I'm going to pass that back over to Carla now, I think.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. That's all the time we have. Please complete the post-webinar survey, and if you have any questions, please visit our websites, ttcglobal.com and tricentis.com. Thanks again.